Hi guys, and welcome to another video from Stupid as the Norm, the channel where we demonstrate how to become a millionaire in 10 years whilst earning only minimum wage. And in this episode I want to explain to you why it is you should only take advice or tips, to be more accurate, from people who've done what it is you want to achieve or aspire to. I considered a trademark of mine, even if I'm the only one to recognize it, that I'm totally honest. You know, if I make mistakes, I'd tell you about my mistakes and I'll tell you about my successes the same way. And that's principally because I've got a terrible memory. And if you're going to be a convincing liar, you have to have an outstanding memory. I also dislike those so-called gurus on YouTube and Instagram who will nip into their boss's office whilst he's out and working in Dubai and shoot a video with Dubai in the background. Same people who, you know, walk up to a Ferrari or a Lamborghini and shoot a quick video in front of it to pass off that Lamborghini or Ferrari as their own, because that's a lot of bullshit. And we see lots of that on YouTube. To that end, you'll never hear me telling someone to do something that I haven't done myself. In fact, I know when somebody asks me a question, what advice would you give? I always tend to prefix it with, look, this is not advice. This is just how I dealt with the situation. So I'm speaking from what I've done, and this is what happened when I did it. So for instance, you'll never find me anywhere on these YouTube channels telling people to be frugal, to cut out lattes, and to live less of a life, if you will, because I disagree with all that. I was never frugal throughout the whole journey. I didn't spend a lot of money. In fact, there are times when I've gone weeks without spending any money. But that was a product of me working 80 hours a week and not having any time to spend money. So the opportunities to spend money were less. So I was at the stage where I was working a lot harder, generating more income, and living off 40% of it whilst investing 60% of it, principally because I was working so hard and there was no time to spend the money. And because I was working 80-hour weeks, I was effectively working 2 full-time jobs, which means I was, although it's a minimum wage, if you take the amount of hours I work and divide it by the money I generate, it's minimum wage. But if that's the case, you've just got to work twice as hard, which is what I did. So any money I made in excess of what I needed to pay the bills, then I just invested for the most part largely in property. And that's because I only had 10 years in which to achieve my goal. And it's very, very difficult to do that in 10 years if you're using the stock exchange. So property was my default method of doing what I'm doing. All that said, I am a fan of the stock exchange. I have, for instance, about 4,500 in my Vanguard ETF ISA, a VWRL, if you're interested which one it was. And that I class as my emergency fund. And it's something I want to do in the future, is to put more money into that as the income from property increases. So I recognize it's the way to do it. It's just, as I said, I've painted myself into a corner by leaving it so late. I've only got 10 years, so I have to be pretty much all in property. So you'll never hear me doing things or advising stuff that I haven't done. So you'll never hear me on these channels trying to convince people to repay their debt. And that's because, unlike people like Dave Ramsey in America, who's an absolute zealot in this, who believes in getting rid of all debt before you start investing, including your mortgages, which I think just puts a drag on the time you give yourself to invest if you're going to repay all this debt. So instead of that, I have what's called a comfortable level of debt. Now, if you've been following me right from the beginning, I started with £10,000 with a credit card debt. And what I did is I moved it to the lowest interest rate, which was a personal loan for me. And that halved the repayments on it. So I was paying about over £400 a month on my credit cards. Moved the lot to a personal loan. It was from the Halifax, and it reduced it to about £220 a month. Still only there. It's only about £6,000. So I haven't got rid of it, but it's a comfortable level of debt. I have more than £600,000, probably closer to £30,000 amongst ISAs and cash in the bank. And I could pay it off in one, but that would slow me down the purchase of the next property. So I'm happy to let that run at what I call a comfortable level of debt, which is an unusual thing to say, because people either take it, don't worry about the debt, or repay it all off. To me, I'm comfortable with it. I'm happy with it. It'll sit there in it's on a personal loan, so it's going to be paid off anyway in the next 3 years or so. So it is what it is. I'm happy with it. I'm not going to let the repayment of the debt slow me down and give me less time to invest. So when I tell people to work an extra 20 hours a week, that's because I worked an extra 40. So I'm not asking them to do anything that I didn't do. When I encourage people, when they're generating this extra money from side hustles or by working an extra 20 hours at their current job. And I encourage them to invest it instead of spending it and increasing their lifestyle. I do so because that's what I did. I was, as I said earlier, I was living off 40%, that covered my bills. So I was able to invest 60% of all the money I was generating from the first 40 hours, or most of the money from the first 40 hours, and then pretty much all the money from the second 40 hours. Again, not asking people to do something that I didn't do. It's possible. I was 57 when I started, I'm 63 now. 80-hour weeks will not kill you. Your body just adapts as long as it gets enough rest and you feed it and nourish it. It will do whatever you ask of it. Now, this channel, at its heart, isn't about how to tell people to become wealthy. What it is documenting my own journey to wealth. So I'm under no pressure to exaggerate how well I'm doing or how fast I'm doing it, because it's just a recording. It's just documenting what I did. And I'm doing it so that if others want to follow me, they can copy what I did and hopefully not make the mistakes that I did. So it's there as also as proof to say it could be done and that you don't have to accept the norm. So I leave the glamour of the Ferraris and the Lamborghinis and the people who have photoshopped themselves into these things to them, because to me it's not attractive. It's not what I'm about. It's about demonstrating, recording, so you can follow and you can copy. And if you have any questions at all, guys, just reach out to me. You don't have to leave a comment here, although the comments are nice because it helps the algorithm. But just drop me an email at abnormal@stupidasanorm.co.uk. then I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Happy New Year, guys. Don't be stupid and don't be normal.